I call this meeting to order at 7:01. Will staff please do roll call?
Morgan White,
Here.
Andrew Stump,
Here.
Jessica Lemkool,
Here.
Luke Westalker,
Here.
Gabriel Dussard.
Here. We can now move on to approval of past minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If not, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second the motion.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. So is there any public input? Did we receive anything? No? Okay.
Luke, on presentations, it was my intention to put Imagine Urbana first so that they could go and
Perfect.
depart the meeting if they so choose, and then I'll go on if you want to switch those.
Yeah, let's do that then, so we can start the Imagine Urbana presentation.
Well, thank you so much for letting us have an opportunity tonight to just brief you on where we're at with this first draft of our Imagine Urbana comprehensive plan. It's been a while since we've been in front of this group, so we're going to give you kind of an overview of what's taken place over the last 2-3 years. It's hard to believe, and then talk a little bit more about the specific big moves and little moves that would impact this commission.
And I'll introduce Andrea Rudy.
We've done this a little too many
Yeah.
times, I forgot.
And I'm Kevin Garcia.
Sorry about
thanks
that.
Thanks for having us.
So first of all, what is a comprehensive plan? And as everybody knows, the name of ours is going to be called Imagine Urbana. It's our community's vision of what the city is going to look like over the next 20 years. And the last time we did a plan was in 2005, so we're right on track to be updating our plan. It articulates the overarching goals, which we're calling big ideas, and the strategic actions, which we're calling big moves, and then the little moves that make that vision a reality. And I might take this opportunity, we sent a notice out to all the commissions back in August and hope that maybe you had a chance to look at the plan. And if you haven't, please, we'd love you to do so and give us some online feedback as well, in addition, of course, to this evening. And it serves as the city's primary long-range planning document guiding the future development of the community. So this is our process, and you'd be glad you've got a computer screen in front of you because it gets kind of small. So our first phase one was our broad community engagement, and also just setting up the framework for the different types of feedback that we hope to get. COVID, of course, happened during that time, so we had to do a little bit of pivoting to see what would work, what we could do in a safe environment. So we started out with a website that we had created with online feedback. You could fill out, you could post ideas on an idea wall, pin maps or pin places on a map. We also had a survey. So that's how we started out. We also did an SMS survey in 4 languages, so people could do it by telephone, and it didn't have to be a smartphone. Then we did a lot of Zoom calls with different groups. Then we started getting into outdoor events, and that was very nice because we could actually see people. But again, doing it in outdoor events, typically in partnership with an existing event that was already going on. So a lot of feedback there. We had social media presence also, and anyway, we published a report on that phase. Then we also, during that time, did what we're calling Examine Urbana, which is our existing conditions in some comp plans, you'll see it called that, or present conditions. However, Examine Urbana just exceeds all of that. It's a very, I don't say interactive, but it's a very, what would you call the document?
Well, it is interactive, and it's also really, it's kind of a deep dive into existing conditions. So I'd say most existing conditions reports, you know, they might be a handful of pages, might be 10 or 15 pages or something, but Examine Urbana is online, it's interactive, it gets deep into a lot of different topics. So check it out if you haven't already.
And throw out that page number if you happen to print it in a
Oh,
PDF.
Yeah, if you print it in a PDF, it's like 330 pages.
But when you see it online, it's real quick to go through, and it really gives a great background on how we got to where we are today. So there's a lot of history. If you don't know the history of Urbana, just go there and it'll give you a lot of information. It's in chapter format, so you can skip to a chapter that you think might be intriguing and then eventually get through them all. Anyway, it's a great document and really encourage you to do so. I know we use it for new employees to give them some idea about the community. So pass it along to your neighbors if you can. So we did that. We also did an assessment of the 2005 plan to see what worked, or if it didn't work, why. So there's a report on that as well, and there's a page later that talks about the reports that happened during this time. And then we started gearing up for the next phase of engagement, which we called Balancing Act, and it was where people had to prioritize what they really wanted to see accomplished in Urbana with limited resources. So it was an online exercise that we also turned it into a board game where people got $100 and they had opportunities that probably totaled $800. So they had to quickly choose what things were most important to them, just like the city has to do with limited resources. So we published a report on that too. Then once we did that, then we started drafting all the feedback that we had received, and that's what you see, or what you'll see when you go online and look at that. So then the rest of the process, we're going to each of the commissions, giving an update. The Plan Commission their first study session was August 22nd. They'll keep doing that, having study sessions at every one of the Plan Commission meetings until it gets to the point that they're ready to recommend it to council. So it does require council approval to get enacted, and we're shooting for having that done by the end of the year. But we're kind of playing that by ear. We want to make sure that everything's vetted, that the Plan Commission has sufficient time to do their review. So the published reports, I mentioned the comprehensive plan assessment, the community outreach summary summarized phase 1 of engagement. Examine Urbana was, Kevin explained, is our existing conditions. The Balancing Act findings summary, we published that comparing both online as well as the in-person game, and then we also did it by ward, so you'll see those findings. And then now we have the comprehensive plan draft. And all of those are in the appendices when you go online. We do have PDFs of the report if you wanted. I put some of them back on the table when you came in. We can also send a PDF to you if you'd like to receive that. The appendix, however, is well over 300 pages because of Examine Urbana, so it's a pretty hefty document even as a PDF. So encourage you to look online for that. So the table of contents, just to give you a quick overview for those that haven't seen it, we have the vision and values, and all of this came from our engagement with the community. It wasn't a group sitting around trying to dream up a vision. We really took it from the feedback that we got from the community at large, as well as our values. Background on how the process evolved. Our big ideas, which we mentioned, are the goals for the community. Big moves and little moves are the strategic action items. Master map, which Kevin has been very instrumental, especially in this last few months, getting that fine-tuned. Also, how we're going to track progress. We found out from the assessment of 2005, if you really didn't have measurement tools in place, oftentimes things didn't happen. And evaluating and reporting. Our goal is to have ongoing updates on where we're at with the plan, as well as doing full updates every 5 years. And the appendices, like I said, that's kind of a monster only because it has all of these reports that we've already published. And then there is a definitions chapter 2, which that would be aside from the reports. So this slide just gives you a hierarchy of how everything fits together. You'll see the overarching goals are at the top, which are the big ideas. And then we have 11 big moves. And then there's various little moves under them. And then all of them have metrics tied to them. And so our big ideas, again, these are what Urbana is going to look like from 20 years from now. So Urbana is a place for everyone. I think some people think that we're already there, and we certainly feel like Urbana is a place for everyone, but we just want to make sure that we make that happen for all the residents of Urbana. Urbana is both financially and environmentally resilient. Urbana is a city of connected neighborhoods, and Urbana embraces its culture, vibrancy, and character. So it's hard to disagree with those, but those are the overarching goals for Urbana. So the big moves, developing a plan to address Urbana's diverse housing needs. This is one that's near and dear. Kevin, why don't you just say that one out loud, because I know that's so important to you.
All right, so the second one is, so I head up our planning division. I'm also the zoning administrator. And so one of the issues with our current comprehensive plan is it's pretty good, it's really good, but we didn't actually update our zoning ordinance to match with the comprehensive plan. So unless you do that, it makes your comprehensive plan much less easy to implement. So big move number 2 is to revise the zoning ordinance to align with Imagine Urbana.
And we talked with a resident today who had been to one of our community meetings. We had 6 community meetings, and she asked the question about, well, are you going to rezone my neighborhood? And so then Kevin went into kind of an explanation about why, meaning, yes, we need to make sure that our zoning ordinances allow people to do the things that they need to do or that they want to do in their neighborhood instead of restricting them. So we kind of view it as the opposite, that it's more permissive than restrictive. And so hopefully we're trying to get that message across.
And just to sort of take a step back with sort of explaining how the comprehensive plan fits into things, is that the comprehensive plan is really our policy document that sort of sets the stage for the next 20 years for our city. And then things like the zoning ordinance are the regulatory documents that actually get you there. So if you don't, you need the policy that says, here's what we're going to do, and then you have your regulatory things like the zoning ordinance that says, well, okay, here's how we're actually going to do it.
And that plays into some of our conversation at the community meetings about maps. People looked at the map and they said, well, wait a minute, I don't see zoning on here. Well, zoning isn't part of the comp plan, as Kevin mentioned, it comes later. Big move number 3, creating neighborhood plans. This is something that we heard early on. The comp plan is a wide community plan, and so we're not getting into the nitty-gritty about different aspects of each neighborhood. And so at some point, we may do neighborhood plans. We might call them something else. They may be small area plans, but there may be some additional detailed plans later. Strengthening downtown Urbana's role as the economic driver of the city, expanding Urbana's arts and culture program, making walkability the default setting. And Kevin, why don't you explain that one too? Because a lot of people maybe don't understand the concept there.
Well, so, I mean, the concept here is that walking should be the number one priority for the way people get around our city. So we want to make a strong policy statement that that's what we want to do. It's not to say, no, you can't drive or take the bus or ride a bike, but it's really focusing on making sure that whatever we do is going to have walking as the first and foremost at the front of our minds.
Promoting incremental development, that might require a little explanation too. And I'm going to let Kevin, we've been working on definitions the past couple of days, so we're near and dear to our heart.
Yeah, and so we're refining these things. We're getting better as we have study sessions at our plan commission. But sort of incremental development is kind of this idea that no matter where you are in a city, what neighborhood you're in, you have to change some to keep from being sort of stagnant. Change is always, it's inevitable. We shouldn't stop it. And incremental development is sort of you should have small changes in each area. You shouldn't do anything drastic because then that can kind of sort of ruin neighborhoods, as the saying goes. But it should be sort of small, appropriate to each area, and that's kind of the concept of incremental development.
Investing in infrastructure that makes sense financially and is environmentally resilient. We had a lot of comments about, well, we need the roads fixed, and nobody can disagree with that. I think every community struggles with some of their aging infrastructure, but we really need to make sure that, yeah, we're doing it in a way that makes sense financially. We have limited resources, and then considering the environment along with that. Increasing Urbana's economic vibrancy. This is one of the things we need. We need to have more revenue in our city. So part of that is focusing on economic development and the vibrancy of our community. Encouraging and supporting community health, safety, and well-being. One of the things I didn't mention up front, you can see in the handout we have in front of you, which is on the next move, which probably impacts this group more, is that everybody on the city staff was involved in some way with the plan. We had all the department heads together, we had study sessions, and we talked about, how the plan can be useful for them or what they needed in the plan to help them do their jobs better. And in this move, you'll see representation by the fire department, the police department. So it's not just a document that's going to be used by our plan commission. It's really a staff use document as well, not just Kevin and his group, which are the primary users, no doubt, but we have others that are going to be using the plan as well. And then big move number 11, advance a healthy, clean, and green community. And so this, I've got a document in front of you that kind of explains that one a little bit better. As I mentioned, you have the big move, and then the little moves are the strategic action items that are going to help us make that big move a reality. So completing a full rewrite of the city's climate action plan, and of course, we don't do that alone. We do that with other community partners that also have plans. Prioritizing energy efficiency and renewable energy in city capital projects. We've had finally we've had some capital projects lately here at the city building and others, and so kind of practicing what you preach. Promoting biking and walking, which I think our community does do a good job of that, being what's our rating for Bike City? Gold level?
Yeah, we're the first gold level bicycle-friendly community in Illinois.
So we want to continue to promote that. Coordinating with the Park District to provide increased access to parks, greenways, recreational areas, and support their strategic plan. Establish an asset management plan to complete our sidewalk network. A lot of neighbors we've heard, well, we've got some bad sidewalks, whether they're brick or even concrete, but some neighborhoods don't even have sidewalks. So that's something that we have to consider as well. Encouraging waste reduction, planting trees in all vacant city tree sites, support installation of renewable energy generation, collectively select one waste management hauler for curbside residential collection. We've gotten some feedback from neighbors on that. Maybe it's some people, we think, well, is it a citywide hauler, or so that we can make sure everybody's got some business, that we don't just cut all these waste haulers off. Maybe they're limited, there's one per area of the city. That's another option. So getting a lot of feedback on that one. Supporting net zero new housing in city housing programs. And I know, Kevin, that might be something that might be, I don't know if you can address it. We're not the housing folks here, but.
Well, I feel like I'm probably the least, aside from
yeah,
the two of us are probably the least expert on that here. So, net zero. I believe that's just buildings that produce more energy than they consume, right? Or even, yeah, that's the zero.
Well, I should have had Scott
Thanks,
just
Scott.
say what it was, yeah. Increasing residential and commercial solar and geothermal installations. How we do that, I mean, you know, it could be incentives. There's a lot of ways that we can implement some of these. Electrify city-owned vehicles. So again, kind of practicing what you preach there as well. And supporting environmental stewardship legislation. That's something else that I think we can probably be more active in. So that summarizes big move number 11. And I think, Kevin, if you want to talk about maps, this link should work.
Sure, yeah, so I
I've got one
can, I
there,
can
but-
open this up too. But a big component of every comprehensive plan is usually what's called a future land use map. Our current plan has a future land use map, so it essentially says what types of uses should go in which areas of the city. But what we're trying to create is sort of one map to rule them all, which would be sort of the future land use, but also future streets and bike and pedestrian connections, and adding some sort of priority areas to focus future efforts on. So and the goal is that we would use this as a tool going forward. Right now, the way the map is set up is it's just online. If you click on it, you can kind of zoom in and you can see like, oh, what's going on in my neighborhood. I'm gonna go to my neighborhood if I can find it. Let's see. Okay, so so the colors correspond to different future land uses. So where are we at here? Why am I losing myself? So anyway, I don't need to click on my neighborhood. But there, that's, okay, so you'll see, so if you click on an area, it'll tell you what the future land use is. So this purple area is what we're calling our mixed use core area. So that's sort of the most intense sort of downtown type areas is the purple. Other areas, like this one's called mixed residential neighborhood. So those are sort of like a medium intensity residential neighborhood. One concept we're introducing in this plan is that essentially we're talking about having complete neighborhoods and connected neighborhoods. So every neighborhood, like there should be no neighborhood that's just, say, all residential uses. There should be some, you can always have some small neighborhood serving businesses that are appropriate for any neighborhood, even if it's really sort of low intensity. It's all kind of along a continuum. So you've got kind of like really residential neighborhoods, but with a little bit of commercial activity, all the way up to really commercial neighborhoods with some residential activity. And then you have sort of your specialty areas, like this big blue area over here, which is the university. So that's an institutional use. So you have some sort of special things, and like the green is green spaces and parks and things like that. You'll note there's a giant green strip going through the center of town, and that's the future Kickapoo Rail Trail, which is actually in our current 2005 plan as a future thing to happen. But now that we've built close to 26 miles of it to the north or to the east of Urbana, just sort of adding that and actually putting it on as a future land use is kind of cool. One other thing you can do is you can add suggestions. So you can just add like sort of general suggestions, some suggestions for future development, and transportation suggestions. So, you know, let's say, I don't know, let's say I want to connect Crystal Lake Park to, I mean, I already know that the Park District has this on their plans, but, you know, if you say, oh, we want to connect this over here or something, it's a little wonky because it's all just areas or whatever, but you can double click that, and then you could say something like, you should build a trail to connect these two things. So you can go and make comments on there. I'm not going to save that one, even though that's a good one. But that'll actually show up on this master map at the end, because I think that is in our bike plan as a future project anyway. So, but right now this is sort of set up as a You can go in, you can make comments. And then at the end of the day, planners will use sort of the master map as a tool. We hope that it'll be used by just regular citizens, definitely our commissions and things for making good decisions going forward. But that's it in a nutshell.
So just to give you a quick rundown of how we rolled out the draft, we mailed postcards to over 21,000 Urbana households, telling them about, hey, the plan's ready for you to review. There was a QR code. And then it told them about the 6 community meetings that we held, and we just completed those last week. Also, we sent it out to the media, all the commissions, et cetera, so all of you should have gotten that on by August 20th. We've advertised in Smile Politely. We did the News Gazette, both digital as well as print. Smile Politely did an editorial, which was very nice, and if anybody'd like that, I've got a link to that. We've, like I said, digital advertising in the News Gazette. We've given flyers to council members, to neighborhood groups, just trying to get the word out because we really wanted people to look at the plan. It's their plan. It came from their input. And like the postcard says, we want to know if we got it right. And so that's why we've been out to the community meetings just to talk with folks. I would say overall it's been very good as far as the, at least capturing what they want, and then we're just getting a lot more feedback on, yeah, hey, you know, what we can do going forward, maybe some of the action steps. So these were the groups. We held, as I mentioned, 6. The idea was to spread them all across the city, different times of the day, different days of the week, so that we could hopefully capture people to what was convenient for them, work, home, school, et cetera. So our review timeline, I mentioned this before, Plan Commission, that's going to be a continuous process here until it gets to the point that it's recommended for adoption. We've had our community meetings, those neighborhood meetings. One I don't have on here, and I apologize, is the Historical Preservation Committee, or Commission. We're meeting with them tomorrow night. And then eventually it'll go to the Council Committee of the Whole and City Council for adoption. So these are tentative dates. I think those will probably slide a little bit depending upon the Plan Commission and their review. So that's our presentation for this evening. We'll be glad to answer any questions, get any input from you, and again, thank you for the opportunity.
I'll go first.
Awesome.
I just want to say thank you so much for coming in. I remember when, I don't think it was y'all that came the last time, but just seeing the project go, just kind of being more on the side, watching all this happen, it makes me really excited to live in Urbana. I know, this weekend I went to something at the Park District, and just there was a new sidewalk built in my neighborhood, and all of those little things are things that my family gets to enjoy, and I just feel really grateful for all of this forward movement. It is really exciting to see all of this stuff written down, and just looking forward to watching it all come to fruition. Yeah.
And we really want the commissions, they're going to be a big part of the rollout of this, when the things for Big Move number 11 specifically, but not that there's others that you'd be involved in as well, but, that's what the commissions are about. We really want them to dig in and be part of that process.
Which is also very exciting. I think, sometimes, as in this commission, this would be a nice thing for us to maybe focus some of our energies on, because I see all of these ideas and concepts like promoting and prioritizing, these kind of nebulous terms, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we actually make this, come to life? And there is a lot there environmentally, especially in number 11, and then the one about the environmentally resilient. So just really excited about it, and it's just got me thinking about a lot of things, and thank you so much for coming and presenting.
Thank you.
And one of the things we didn't cover in detail tonight was the metrics part of it. If you look at the metrics online, you can see what we're going to be looking at in order to make some of these things happen. So I encourage you to look at that section as well.
Hi.
Hello.
So yes, I echo what what Jessica said. I kind of want to, because I was able to go to one of the public sessions and really appreciated seeing the overview there. And then I learned a little more today, and I still need to get out to the website.
And I think you
The new
chimed in, you
website.
helped us out on the Kickapoo Rail Trail, I think, too. You knew an answer to one of the questions one evening.
Thanks. I have a couple questions on the little moves. One of them, with the promote biking and walking, I'm surprised it doesn't say and transit. Was there conversation about that, or is it just hadn't?
Yeah, so we initially had it say promote biking and walking and transit, or
Yeah.
probably with a comma in there. But anyway, yeah, we had it say and transit, but we wanted to keep this limited to things that we actually have control over. And since we are not MTD, and transit is sort of their thing that they do, we struck transit from there. That's not to say that we can't, as the city, promote transit. We do. But I think we were trying to be cognizant of focusing on things that we have control over.
I disagree with that, because the same, not to, get into a deep debate, but the same, there's the same argument could be made about impacting renewable energy use in corporations and residences. And I mean, the city has some ability to influence private groups and public bodies. So, I mean, we're going to work with the Park District, could also work with the MTD, the Sanitary District, the school districts, all the districts, right? So I don't support not including transit, but
Yeah.
I understand if that's where it ends
Yeah.
up, as long as we still actually intend to also promote transit.
Yeah, you make a good point. Thank you.
And the other question I have is, now I forgot it. We had actually done quite a bit of initial efforts a decade ago or so towards promoting green stormwater infrastructure and rainwater management. And I know that the city had been working on, or is still working on, a stormwater plan. Actually, I don't know if that got done, but it was in progress last time I looked into it. And it's not reflected in the little moves. I think something about, sustainable rainwater management would be a smart addition. It is actually one of our key climate issues, is the rain and the small-scale flooding because of the changes in the way that the precipitation is happening. So I would recommend adding something about
Okay.
that.
Yeah, and I know we are doing it, but yeah,
Happening,
it's
but
good.
it's not
Yeah,
named, and I think
Which-
the
yeah.
change in mentality to not just try to get rid of water, right? How do we? It's part of the resilience, but it's not really part of the economic resilience. It's more part of addressing the changes that are happening.
Yeah, and I have no problem including things that we're already doing that are good things, because then it's, but just stating that is good.
Because you want to perpetuate them.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Right.
Keep it going. Mhm.
good point. And please, we don't expect all your comments tonight. If you have any feedback, forward them to Scott. He'll make sure that we get them. If you don't have our emails directly, they're right here on this page. Feel free to, send us any comments, and also go online. Make your comments there. The comments online, your name's not affiliated with them. Nobody else is going to see them. It's just internal staff will see them. So, say what you want. We like to hear the good and the not so good as well. So please do that.
So on the tracking progress, you have the complete a full rewrite of the city climate action plan, and then the project lead and partners includes SAC. How have you envisioned SAC's role in that? And is it more advisory, or would you like us to actually go through and really help rewrite this plan?
I might ask Scott how he would envision that, since I think he'd be probably the lead staff on that.
I think the level of involvement could span the range of what you just described, the two options you described. I think in the past, there were iterative meetings with SAC throughout the process. So, you know, getting some direction at the beginning, and then taking feedback throughout to, you know, course correct as the plan is developed. And, you know, some members are going to be a little more involved than others. There might be members who are subject matter experts on certain items that, you know, are spending a lot of time providing some input or information outside of meetings. And then other members that are reflecting during the meeting and giving feedback.
I think you have a question.
It's about the map you showed earlier, specifically about the expansion of the mixed-use development, but also the kind of the yellow areas, which were single-use development. And I'm not sure if I'm reading this correctly, but it seems like there's a lot of expansion of single-use. Yellow would be single-use, correct?
No. So like I was saying, it's we don't envision, we don't want to see single sort of uses anywhere. So it wouldn't be this area is only residential, because you can't have a complete neighborhood with only one thing happening. But sorry.
So this would just
Yeah.
be majority single-family homes with intermittent businesses and shops.
And you know, probably some level of, you know, not just single homes, but things like duplexes, maybe 3 or 4 unit buildings. It would. So again, this is sort of the future land use map, and then when you get down into the details, that's where the zoning comes in. So the areas that are all yellow on here, in a future zoning map, those could be sort of maybe a few different specific zones. But when we rewrite the zoning ordinance, that's when we'd sort of come up with what those zones would look like. And I hope that answers your question.
Pretty well.
Okay.
Like residential, for instance, has several different zoning levels, right now, anyway.
Yeah, it does.
2 or 3 or 4.
Yeah, and it's, I don't, having been here for 10 years, I don't find our current zones and zoning ordinance to be something that's going to get us to where this plan says we want to go. So that's why we're talking about a rewrite of the zoning ordinance.
Thank you, and I don't have any other questions, so.
Okay, thanks.
I have just one quick one. In the encourage waste reduction, is there anything about a plastic bag tax in Imagine Urbana?
No, that would be sort of the finer details that would come out of sort of taking this concept and then running with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Another question. This is related back to, it's probably a question for Scott, but the net zero housing, are we thinking net zero greenhouse gas emissions, net zero energy, or net zero impact
Net zero usually refers to net zero energy.
energy? So net, like actually producing that amount of energy, not offsetting with renewable energy certificates, et cetera?
Yes, it usually does not include when people are talking about net zero renewable energy credits. But,
Thanks.
you know, those are things probably that would be good to sort out and write down at some point as it's developed.
If there are no more questions, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.
And like I said, if you do want a PDF of it, just let Scott know, and we'll be glad to send that to you. I can send it to Scott, and he can forward.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, we can now move on to staff report.
Thank you. So let's start with a couple of updates on our bulk purchase programs. We are still been at this level at 13 tons across 3 systems installed for geothermal Urbana-Champaign. We've had the same level of interest and site assessments in previous years. The contracts are just not converting as fast as they have in previous years. I'm hopeful that by the time we close the program that we'll have a nice number of systems contracted. But it's going slow this year. Some good things that have happened. We are attracting some smaller drill rigs to our market, and that opens up smaller lot sizes that can fit in a geothermal system. So hopefully that'll help convert some contracts. On solar Urbana-Champaign, we're not finished yet. We're having a fantastic year at 633 kilowatts installed across 47 systems. This is really, really good, one of our best years. And it's not quite over yet, so really happy about that. About half of that capacity has already been installed. The vendor is confident they're going to get at least the 633 installed before the year is up, which is important so that those households can apply for a net metering rider on their property and get full retail net metering before it expires at the end of the year. Last time we met, SAC members had asked for some updates on street lighting efforts with the city. And so I've collected from a couple of different folks at Public Works working on this. I've collected some anecdotes here to share with you in the staff report. Staff continue to develop a streetlight asset management plan. So the big idea there is streetlights are assets, but assets require maintenance. So what do we have, and what does it cost to maintain it, and what expansion of that list of assets do we envision? Part of that effort is ascertaining the diversity of types of equipment that we have, poles, lamps, and lighting inside the lamps. We're gonna narrow those down, not to one lamp across the whole, or street light across the whole city, but a smaller number, 3 or 4 types, so that it's far more efficient to stock and replace those street lights. We've also, as part of the Equal initiative, working on being more equitable in the distribution of city services, accepted a bid for installation of some new street lights in underserved areas. That project is moving forward. There was some discussion about some Ameren street lighting incentives. One of the challenges there that we've suffered in the past is the timing can be such that we imagine the project, develop the project, buy the equipment, and then file for the Ameren rebate, and they've run out of funding for the program, and we just are paying the full freight of the project that we envision them, picking up a portion of the tab for. So there's some hesitancy there, but we're investigating a number of incentive opportunities with street lighting. Separately, there's some discussion of occupancy sensors. That was decided against for a number of reasons. Particularly, it would require some rework of the systems there in the parking deck. So the electricians have looked into that, but have decided against that at this time. And then I don't think I have a note in here, but we're also moving forward with a street light relamping project where we're just swapping out older high-energy lamps with newer LED low-energy lamps in a number of fixtures as part of the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program with the federal government. I'll pause there if there's any questions on those first two things before on U-Cycle.
I have two questions. One, on the solar Urbana-Champaign, and I don't know if it's even plausible on the geothermal one, is there an energy storage option that's part of the bulk contract? Like a battery, what have you?
I am not 100% this year, but typically we do have pricing for battery backup, but I don't think we've ever sold one.
I was gonna say, do we know if anyone's done that yet?
I don't think we've ever sold one in our bulk solar purchase program.
Okay. The other question I have is about lighting, and I know you just gave a great update on the street lights, the exterior lights. Has it crossed your path yet that they're gonna stop selling fluorescent bulbs in a couple years? We need to work on what can we do when these bulbs run out and they're no longer available for sale. It's a new state law. So that's less a question.
Okay,
I'll share what I
yeah, that would be
have
great
with
to learn
about
more
it.
about that.
We don't have an answer yet for campus. We're looking for one.
Anything else before? Okay. Commissioners had also asked about what recycling looks like for the U-Cycle program, what recycling looks like further down the value stream. You know, after we've collected it, our vendor has processed it, they've baled materials, and they've, you know, looked for markets to sell those materials off. And our recycling coordinator, Courtney Kwong, followed up with a number of vendors, ones that we contract with directly, and then secondarily vendors that our contractor works with to market materials. And I've included that in the packet, but it's really remarkable to note that all the mills that our materials are going to are domestic. Midwest Fiber is a company that has a footprint in Urbana as well as Bloomington Normal, bigger facility in Bloomington Normal. And they end up marketing a lot of the materials collected by different companies here in this market. And they are, I mean, they've reported to us that they allow 3 to 5% contamination levels in bales. So, you know, that's a pretty good number to think about when you know, we're collecting, you know, 100% from residents, and there's probably 3 to 5% that gets sorted at the facilities and gets filtered out, and then there's not much more that the next step in the recycling stream will accept. It's another 3 to 5%, or they're going to reject a bale. So that's really encouraging, I think, and it's remarkable to find out. So I've included that information from the recycling coordinator here.
They say how often that 3 to 5% is exceeded, or are we just?
You know, we didn't get any feedback on that. Like, you know, are they rejecting 1 or 2 bales a day or 1 or 2 bales a year? I don't have a sense of scale on that.
I'm sure it's not the latter, you know, but yes, that would be interesting to know. So it's basically saying if there are 3 to 5% of the bale has something in it that it shouldn't be, that's when they're sending it back. And that was the information that we got, is just that number. Okay, thank you.
So does ABC Sanitary, did you say, do they sort out some of that contamination before baling?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
Luke, that was my actual question. Or I was trying to get there, but I lost it. Yes, thank you, Luke.
So our U-Cycle contracts are structured that we hire a company to collect materials, and they have to figure out the sorting. They can do it themselves, or they can tip it on someone else's floor and pay them to do it, but they got to figure it out. And so our current vendor, ABC, has their own sort facility. So they're sorting materials and baling them and moving them on down the line towards mills for reprocessing. So in their facility, they're going to have, they report very low contamination, very low amount percentages up to us of what gets sorted into the landfill pile. And I think that they go through Midwest Fiber to market their materials down the line towards mills. And so Midwest Fiber is saying that, you really can't have, as you move from one vendor to the next, you can't have more than 3 to 5% contamination.
Is this all subject to change with the new vendors, or are all of these usually set?
This is all pretty standard, industry practice. What may change is there may be a vendor who doesn't do their own sorting. And so they may take it to another facility where it gets sorted. And that vendor may market the materials themselves or, like ABC does, take it to someone else to market.
And just to clarify, this recycling is only residential, so like no businesses?
Correct. We don't provide commercial recycling. We have one contract for curbside, so single-family residence through 4 attached units, and then one contract for multifamily apartments, but we don't provide any commercial recycling.
Are there any city ordinances or state stuff that mandates a certain level of recycling over just landfill for businesses?
No.
It's too bad. It is. It's like in working in a restaurant before, just throwing away recycling. All of it's recyclable, just straight up boxes, just straight up cans. All we would have to do is just rinse them. It's so much, 20 big cans every time you make something. So it's a bummer.
Is it common for businesses to recycle, or is that something that's reserved for the biggest cities or just certain cities?
It's different depending on the type of material. So cardboard recycling is pretty common. It has good recoverable value, and it's pretty straightforward to handle. Metals also have recoverable value, so there's a lot of facilities that will recycle metals. After that, it starts falling off because the cost benefit starts tipping in an unfavorable direction. Differences between, small and large companies. Sometimes there is a large nationwide company that has their own recycling goals and they recycle everything. So it's diverse.
Has the city ever kind of,
No,
Wouldn't it be sweet in that climate action plan?
perhaps.
So many things to incentivize for businesses, Yeah. Did anyone hear that California is banning plastics in grocery stores? Which I'm obviously not, I know, I'm not suggesting that, but it's just to think about, so we see that these things happen and then eventually it comes our way. It takes a really long time usually, but we know, so we're just making more and more plastic. It never breaks down. All of this toxic plastic everywhere. It would be really sweet if Urbana could just be really cutting edge in what we're doing. I feel like there's such a space for that, and this Imagine Urbana stuff got me thinking about that. There's such a space for us to be leading the way a little bit in Illinois as a small town. I hope we can get there. Just so much waste and so much to work on and so much going on in our poor little earth.
Through U-Cycle, are we getting like discounted rates that businesses might not be getting, or is there like some bulk benefit that the city could loop in businesses, or?
So we get some economies of scale by being able to drive down, take curbside recycling, for instance, being able to drive down every single road and not have to have a list of customers by address, but just pick up every U-Cycle labeled can that's on the street, because every household is a customer. So there's some economies of scale there for sure. When you get to multifamily recycling and when you get to commercial recycling, you may not see the same economies of scale in terms of routing, because there's apartments here and there are businesses here and there, rather than just simply driving every single street. There's also some distinctions between, again, multifamily. I'm going to lump multifamily recycling with commercial as opposed to curbside, in that, curbside, we can give every single household the same can, and it pretty much works out in terms of capacity. But that's not, the same is not true for multifamily and commercial. Some businesses, all their work is on a computer, and they're not really producing, they produce a couple cans of soda. They may not even produce any paper. They may not print things because they're all on the computer. Another business is manufacturing auto parts, and they're producing aluminum scrap and hazardous waste. So there's a huge diversity there from customer to customer, and that increases the back of house cost, the office maintenance cost, to maintain all that. So, just from our experience, or Courtney Kwong's experience operating the curbside versus the multifamily, I think she would say that there's a lot more staff time to manage the multifamily service than the curbside, because there's just more diversity. And things change over time. We've used the exact same can size for curbside resident customers for, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years, I'm not sure. But a single multifamily apartment, we're using the same can sizes, but we might have 4 cans there 1 year, and then it seems like it's not enough, and so we have 6 cans, and sometimes we're there 3 times a week, but they seem empty. We could go down to 2. So there's a kind of a constant tuning on the multifamily, and I imagine that commercial would have a lot of the similar things, excepting that there's more diversity of what's coming out the back door of the business versus multifamily. Multifamily is producing the same materials as curbside, whereas business to business is quite different.
So are we making, I guess, is it like I understand some economies in residential, but like, is this a cost for Urbana, or is it we're breaking even, you know what I mean, on the whole recycling thing, like to expand to businesses? Because I think people who are going to businesses would like to know that businesses are recycling. Like, it would be such a great offering, right? Or it's something to incentivize.
Even if you consider the collection of recyclables into the container as a free service that someone else does, AKA the resident, everything afterwards is a net cost. So, we have a net cost in U-Cycle. If we controlled the collection, the baling, the marketing, and the sale of the materials, we'd have a net cost. So, the vendors are, they're making a business. They're making a business out of collection and selling materials only by combining the 2 revenue streams of us paying them to collect and other people paying them for the materials. Or to put it another way, the value recovered of the materials is not enough to pay for the collection costs.
But aren't we, I mean, as a city, we're breaking even by having a tax. Was it a property tax? Would that not be available with businesses in some fashion? Is there a restriction?
U-Cycle is completely funded by a U-Cycle specific fee or tax assessed to every
B,
residence.
excuse me.
I think it might be tax in the code, but it's not a property value-based tax. It's a flat tax on every residence. So that funds U-Cycle, which is to say we pay for recycling, we pay for all the values we get out of recycling, less landfills, some savings in greenhouse gases from making products from new material. Those savings vary dramatically depending on the material. So for instance, huge greenhouse gas savings when we make an aluminum can out of recycled aluminum. Very small greenhouse gas savings when we make a glass bottle out of recycled glass, just as for instance. So we're paying for all those environmental attributes upfront because the material recovery value isn't enough to pay for it.
Is there any way to figure out, like for businesses, if they were recycling, would they be spending less on trash? So could we have some sort of offering where instead of paying it to throw your stuff in a landfill, you're paying it for it to be recycled? Is there any way to like figure that out and wrap them into this U-Cycle program? Somehow?
One could construct, some for instances, like idealized scenarios, right? Again, different from one business to the next, but there's a bunch of complexities that are going to immediately come into play when you imagine those scenarios. One is, do they have room, behind the building for 2 separate cans? Do they have staff that can be trained to sort and put things in one bin or another? And what's their staff turnover? Because you got to train the new people. I think when you start stacking those soft costs, that's part of the reason why a lot of businesses decide to just put it all in the garbage. It's not that they're unaware that recycling exists. It's costs and simplicity, I imagine.
I firmly believe, and it's just sort of a dream, a belief I have, that the consumer's demand is more influential than a city offering for recycling. So going to a business and saying, where's your recycling? I can't believe you don't have recycling. What do you just throw that away? Like that kind of behavior from the client, the customers of the businesses, I think has the most impact. But I agree, it'd be nice to, maybe our commission could at least say, here are the companies that we can put a list. Here's who you can call if you want to start doing recycling in your business. And we could tell people, look at this. You can start recycling. You just have to pay to have recycling done. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm with you on like consumer demand, but consumers are demanding products that aren't harmful and,
Right,
the demand is
Maybe
not.
we can change that.
Right, and so that's where I've seen other models in other towns where they have like, the city has led the way, right? And then all of a sudden, all the business are composting and recycling and doing all of these things, like really moving to less waste. So that's why I was just thinking big on imagining Urbana a little bit, where we're kind of leading the way and making it easier for people. Because if it's more expensive to recycle, businesses will not do that because it's already so expensive to own a business. But if they can spend about the same and recycle some of their trash and also trash their trash, then maybe we could see some movement there. It's a lot, a lot of trash. I'd be interested to know even just how many businesses actually recycle, but I don't know, perhaps climate action plan. I don't know.
I also like the idea of having like a universal, like, what is recyclable in Urbana? And like a U-cycle, like on there, it says what you can recycle in that bin. And if that's in like every store and business, like it's, hopefully we're like, there's less training and more just like a cultural understanding of this is what we recycle in Urbana. And it's really easy, you just throw it in a bin with the U-cycle logo.
This is such a point, because to your point about like training workers go through training, but like people in homes don't. And I'm not gonna call out any family members of mine that throw away dirty paper plates. I'm like, I'm like cleaning out my own recycling at home, because like people don't recycle correctly, you know, that's something like my students struggle with. So I do agree with Luke that that would be such a reasonable, like, public education campaign that we could extend to businesses, hopefully, and maybe hopefully figure out a way to get them on board with recycling and just make it easy for them, because there's just so much to think about and do that at the end of the day, as we all know, trash becomes like, oh, it's trash. I just want to get it out of my sight right now, right? But it's really this thing that's just lurking in the background, kind of everywhere, you know? Went to Mexico, went to the beach, went really like 100 miles out in the middle of nowhere. Just, I mean, we all have seen the videos of the ocean and stuff, but just trash. It's so sad. So same thing up in the Great Lakes, you know? So it's not just a regional thing. It's just, we're choking on it. So anyway, thank you so much for looking into that, Scott, about the recycling. And I'm sorry for tangenting us into the whole business recycling, but excited just to see how we can just lead the way on some things or move forward.
Any last comments here? Is there any unfinished business that we need to cover that's not on the agenda? No. Okay, so we can move on to new business, and this kind of ties in. I want to briefly talk about like the purpose of SAC and kind of get on the same page about maybe goals for the next year or what we're thinking about. And we can also have this as unfinished business for next meeting. But Scott attached the ordinance for SAC, and it talks about how we're supposed to be here to help like the mayor and city council in identifying highest priorities for like the government and citizens for sustainable management of our resources. So I think it'd be great if we could start getting some goals and some things that we want to address in the next year, and if recycling is one of these things, or when we're working on the climate action plan, kind of highlight what issues we want to tackle. So are there any things we can like start adding to this list, or things people are really interested in addressing with SAC?
I don't know if this is really outside of our jurisdiction, or, but I think protected bike lanes could be something really interesting to examine, because they have them kind of a lot of places. They're reasonably easy to implement. I just think it'd be interesting.
Is there a transportation commission?
There's a Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, so it's the advisory commission like this one. Not that I would say don't touch that because there's another commission, but
Yeah.
I think we have to have some bounds as to what's in sustainability and what's out. Otherwise, otherwise we're city council. But I think you're fine to contemplate transportation.
And we can always reach out to them too and be like, hey, this is something that feels very important to us. Are there ways we can help out with that? Or, yeah.
I support looking at recycling in commercial and institutional facilities in the city, and identifying ways to increase recycling in general. I also would suggest pretty much everything that's on the list of the little moves under the Big Move 11. And there might be some also in the the one that was about financial, I can't quote it, but the other big move that reflected on environmental resilience. Well. And of course, helping to update the climate action plan is actually one of these too.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. So were you saying, Luke, that there's some sort of thing that was shared with us that kind of says what we're actually supposed to do, or?
From like 2008.
Okay.
So like initially just like advise mayor and city council on helping the city be sustainable is how I read it. But that's so open.
Yes. So, yeah, I think that's always been, in my experience as on this committee for a few years, which can't believe I'm, kind of a little bit veteran, but I think as a new member, I was like, yes, I recognize that that was the nebulous goal, but I'm like, what am I actually supposed to be doing here? And I know we spent a lot of time setting goals, these JEDI goals, and I know that, Scott, you do a lot with your work and all of that. But in terms of like us actually making actionable change, it feels a little bit like we're talking sometimes and not doing. I'm sure people individually are, and people are with their work in different ways, but it is kind of like, when I saw this on the agenda of like the purpose of the SAC, I think is something really important to talk about. Like, I'm glad that was on there. So, yeah.
Can we also just send resolutions to city council like we did with the plastic bag tax? Is that something that we can just do more often? Or what are good ways for us to like communicate and reach out things that we think are important?
I would say all the ways. So you could craft a resolution and approve it out of this commission and ask staff to send it to mayor and council. You could, collect feedback from the commission and schedule recurring meetings with department directors or the mayor's office. Email, social media. I think these are all, reasonable forms of communication to consider.
Could we also even like potentially, now I'm recognizing that maybe we don't have a ton of bandwidth as this meeting meets once a month, but like do a native plant event for Urbana, like actually have an event that we do every year? Is that something within our realm?
Sure. Just know if was it 3 or more of you are going to be in the same place discussing something that might be related to commission business, you either don't do that or we notice a meeting.
We had in the past been requested as commissioners to be volunteers at sustainability related city events, like with the rain barrel sale and the compost bin sale, the pumpkin smashing event, tabling at I think it was the farmer's market and sweet corn festival when that was a thing here, and that kind of thing. And I think that's an important place for us to show up, but it has not proven very successful just from the conflicting, all the other things that commission members are doing outside of the commission. Yeah. I'm interested also in, go ahead, Andy. I'll remember. I'm interested if, is there would it be possible for us to meet with neighborhood groups and businesses and you had talked about how we could reach out and speak with different people in the government here, but what about non-government? Is there any caveats that we need to be aware of if we're doing that? Just if there's 3 of us together, only groups of 2 could do it to not be violating the open meetings act?
I think it's 3 or more for a body of 7 makes it a meeting. If you're discussing, commission business.
Which would be for the point is what I was picturing, but do you count in that?
No, I'm not on the commission.
Okay. that's it.
Partially answered my question or comment, but I think in the past, we've had city councilors come to our meetings, provide input or have a conversation. But I guess we could have city persons come and do the same. Then we'd be at a meeting, so it wouldn't be
It would also be great if we could try and incentivize more public comment, or like have some meeting that's like, hey, reach out to all these groups. If you want to talk to us, let's just have a big meeting where we talk with the public.
I think it would be good if we do those, that we have a topic on hand that is directly, like, that is a reason to come beyond I care. Because I think a lot of people care. It's just, they care about a lot of things. We all do.
I agree with that, and maybe thinking about like some kind of, and maybe this already exists, I'm sure it does already exist, certainly in a sustainability standpoint, but like pillars of things that we're kind of thinking about. When I think about this climate action plan, like I'm picturing there's so many different realms to even start, micro goaling about. So maybe that could be something that we think about for ourselves, like what we would want that to look like, or maybe our experts already have that, or I don't know.
I mean, in the past, when we did the climate action plan, we spent meetings going over certain parts of it, so there's lots of interaction. So I think that will take up a lot of our time when we do that, so.
So, and then in the past, what did that actually look like? Like the plan, it was more of an advisory standpoint, or was it creating? And what are people thinking about for this next climate action plan? What are we feeling,
My first thought is to review, to make sure all of the commissioners have read the previous version. The annual reports that I think you've seen some of those reviewed here before they go to up the chain from Scott's office. Those generally are reflective of the metrics that were kind of established in that original plan. We had a great discussion about, should our goals in our climate action planning be things we already know we can achieve, or should they be visionary goals? And there's an argument for both sides of that. So that'd be an interesting discussion here. But the actions that are in there, or at least the goals that are in the climate action plan, I think we aren't the ones who end up approving it, right? We can help create it, but it ends up going through the city for official approval and adoption. Is that correct?
In the past, we've iteratively compiled a climate action plan or a water management plan, declared some version of final, come to the SAC and asked for a resolution approving the final, and then taken that to city council for an official endorsement.
And then, is that kind of what you see happening this time? Like, probably the same, yeah. Because I was even just thinking, even creating goals, like talking to the recycling person, because they know they're the expert on that, and know it's got to be a pretty lean crew of people that are hopefully carrying out all of these things. I don't know if it's maybe a huge crew, but probably, I just know everybody in every field right now is just feeling all the pressures and overworked, so being realistic, but, okay.
Thinking about this agenda item and just zooming out for a moment, we heard tonight that this comprehensive plan for the city for the next, several decades is in a draft form and being reviewed, and some version of it will be approved. And then also we heard that a zoning ordinance or, reform or a new rewrite would follow that at some point in the future. Those are all public engagement opportunities that these commissioners here can participate in, and you can show up or email or whatever and say, I'm so-and-so and I am on the commission, and this is what I think. You're not saying that you speak for the commission, and it's understood that you're not speaking for the commission. When the commission passes a resolution, the commission is speaking. But it's fine for you to participate as a commission, a known commission member in, the comprehensive plan development, zoning reform, as well as the every 2-year mayor and council goals making sessions. And, if you attended every one of those meetings, that'd be a lot of work you'd be putting in, as a commissioner, so.
I do think that type of work, though, is going to be a lot more productive than just like volunteering for certain events, though, because it says like in the ordinance that we're supposed to identify highest priorities. So I think if we really start like feeling free to just email everyone, like Scott is saying, just, hey, here are our thoughts, and just get that to be normalized, that would be amazing. Or just when we're like going through these little moves, be like, hey, here are our thoughts on some of these things, and just get that in writing and build that lane of communication.
I agree. And also welcome new person. Just want to say that what a great day for you to have like your first meeting where we're actually just talking about who we are, where are we, what are we, all the things. So welcome.
So we can't have a like Google document that we're all editing, but we can have a document that we have edits on, we send to you, and you distribute or compile those edits.
Yes, electronic communication is still communication and may constitute a meeting. You can, something that's happened in the past is there'd be something to work on or question for members to contemplate after, between one meeting and the next. Members individually send me, comments. I compile those, and then at the next meeting, which is a noticed public meeting, I can share those comments in the packet, and they can be discussed at the meeting. But we can't have a kind of a back and forth in any electronic way, in the same way that you can't have 3 or more members back and forth outside of a meeting.
Are we at a point where we could start looking at the climate action plan and start compiling those comments, or is this a little early on for us to start doing that?
I think it's early on. It's it's a draft notion in the comprehensive plan. Before we would do work on a planning document, we'd want to establish a budget to do that work. If the budget is $1 million, we're going to have rock concerts and to get public feedback. If it's $1,000, we're going to have a survey on the website. So what we can do is based on the budget for the project. So we don't have a budget, and it's a draft goal at this point.
What is their time frame? Do they have a time frame for starting it? Finishing it?
They mentioned in the presentation, I thought she said,
November 25 for approving the Imagine Urbana comprehensive plan. Does the funding then happen with the next fiscal year? Or it might happen during this current fiscal year, which is through June?
so the comprehensive plan is approved. Let's imagine the comprehensive plan is approved. There's, 100 different things or whatever the number is that the plan says the city should do. it's a 20-year plan or whatever the number is, so over the course of 20 years. And presumably, most or all of those things will require staff direction or funding. And so then individual discrete elements of that plan will have to have executive or legislative direction or funding.
So that got me thinking about something. Maybe we could work on prioritizing the little moves and share that as one of our, comments to city leadership about what we would want to see done in the first year and then in the subsequent sort of chunks as far as staff time.
Because their list isn't prioritized.
It doesn't have numbers, it's just bullets, so.
Yeah, and maybe we can just hopefully voice our opinion that the climate action plan needs to be soon. It is in Big Move 11, so I'm sure they're not thinking about it like that, but, just recognizing that that is something that needs to happen soon. Or if it's not, then maybe we could spend our time looking back at the old climate action plan and let's talk about maybe what hasn't been happening or what we could work on more. I don't know, just throwing out ideas here.
I might be a little bit out of the loop. So the old climate action plan, on the website, you had climate action plan 1 and 2. Is the second one expired, or is
Correct.
Okay, so we need to draft a new one.
In 2020, right? It was 2015
right.
to 2020, so, yeah.
Oh, so it would be almost pointless to look at the old one, except for it's just like a model for the new one. So it's expired. Okay. So hopefully climate action plan soon.
When we, if we get to the point where we're going to discuss how we go about making a new climate action plan, we would probably want to spend a few minutes reflecting upon lessons learned from the past.
For the next meeting, then, can we start the process on a resolution? I'm not entirely sure what that has to be. So at the next meeting, we can talk about that, order the little moves, and put our comments. Do you need to send anything out beforehand for us to get started on that document at the next meeting?
So it is expeditious for someone to come to the meeting with a drafted resolution. That can be staff, that could be a member. Whoever does it would communicate with the chair and staff to put it in packet so that folks would have a chance to see it on Friday and comment on it and vote on Tuesday. I mean, of course, everyone is empowered to ask the chair for an agenda item. The chair sets the agenda, and 6 people could show up with a resolution if they wanted to and debate that, but that's going to make up for a long meeting. Given the likely agreement on it, it probably makes sense for 1 or 2 people to draft one, put it in packet, and then discuss the finer points in the meeting.
And again, this would be a resolution on the priorities thing, or is that what we're talking about? I'm just making sure I'm understanding. Or a resolution for anything?
I'm thinking more on like the little moves and something that we can comment for Imagine Urbana. Is that what other people were thinking, or?
I had proposed that as a step we could take. I think that the prioritization, I don't think it's necessary as far as what goes into the comprehensive plan called Imagine Urbana. So I don't think we're on a deadline like before they approve it in November if they stay on that schedule. That's their current plan, the current schedule. I actually think it's more, we should talk about it when we have time here and look at things like, is this already happening? is this something that we can support directly, like that we could do something, like with the climate action plan, we could do something. We could, start the draft or something to that effect. Is it something that, is it something that needs a lot of funding or some of these questions about each of these, so we could talk through what makes the most sense that we would recommend get prioritized for funding and staff time, city resources. And then once we've kind of figured that out, then we put it in, whereas this matters to us, here's what we think, be it resolved, that's the resolution, right? But I think we need that discussion first, and I don't think that's urgent in reflection of the plan itself, the Imagine Urbana plan.
I could see that discussion being like a meeting, but also I could see that discussion being multiple meetings where we take this kind of section by section, just throwing out a structure. Another thought that I have, if we're talking about creating a climate action plan, it would be really cool to get some people who are passionate about or experts in what are the problems we're facing, like in our region, and how can Urbana actually do anything about it. So I don't know if that is I don't know how to find those people necessarily, but I could start thinking on it. But how could we get people in so that we're talking about what could potentially be in that future plan? Or even models from other cities that have done cool sustainability things that have made a difference.
One way I imagine doing this is having a working resolution. So like our next meeting, like I just have some draft thing, and then we go through the old climate action plan, identify a few like, whereas the 2015-2020 said this would be done, it's not been done. And then we can slowly go through the little moves list and at each meeting, add something or edit it. And then after a few months, we'll have a finished document of our recommendations to give to council and mayor. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable. It's worth noting that our next meeting will be December 3rd. We don't have a November meeting.
Oh my gosh, okay.
More time to draft a resolution.
Yes, and to look over the climate action plan yesteryear.
So maybe homework is people can look through that climate action plan. Thank you so much. I know this is making the meeting run long, but I hope that's going to be very productive.
I feel like it's very much worth it in terms of having like a unified vision and whatnot. So thank you for putting it on the agenda if you did.
We can move on to the discussion of U-Cycle, but I think we already talked about that. So unless there are any new comments on that.
I'll just briefly mention the procurement effort is not finished. We've received bids from 2 vendors on curbside recycling and 3 vendors on multifamily recycling. We're reviewing and evaluating those proposals. We will eventually, select winning vendors and enter into contracts for service. The prices are higher than what we've paid in the past. That's expected. Year-on-year average inflation in the U.S. is something like 3%. We have had fixed pricing for 6 years now. So that's 6 years of inflation that has not been priced in, presumably. In addition, we had a significant inflationary period, that slowly is wound down, in the last year. So there's a lot of inflation that has not been priced in, so we anticipated higher prices. In the multifamily bidding, we're looking at about 1.5 times more expense. In the curbside recycling, we're looking at about 4 times more expensive. Now, Typically, service contracts are 1, 2, 3-year periods. Use cycle is a 5-year period. It's a 5-year period because the work envisaged requires substantial investments in capital equipment. And buying a $250,000 piece of machinery for a 1-year contract is tough. So we do longer terms, so that investing in a $250,000 piece of equipment is going to have a revenue stream for more years. However, when we start putting all that together, what we have is substantially higher prices in the middle of a fiscal year, locked in for 5 years. Our staff is planning to make a city council appearance to brief council on the outcome of the bidding process, the implications, and get some feedback as to whether, in future budget making sessions, they'll be supportive of spending those higher amounts on recycling service. So we're gonna try and make time on city council agenda as soon as we can.
Just hearing that this is just getting more and more expensive just makes me wish that like Urbana could lean on other government, like state government or whatever, to do something about it. It's just like companies make all this trash and we have to buy our goods in the trash and then we're just paying to deal with the trash, and it's just becoming more and more cumbersome to just buy a thing, It's really, really kind of out of control. I don't know. Very unfortunate as we get back to the trash. So that is my last comment on the trash today.
Any other comments? Then the final new business was just discussion about recruiting commission members. I think a good just tie-in is if we do start talking to like experts in different groups, maybe we can see if someone from one of those groups wants to join SAC, and then we can have a closer tie-in. I don't know if there are any other, because Scott said we can like post on social media, we can reach out to our networks and everything, but maybe the most effective way is also when we're networking to just be like, oh, also join SAC. Any other comments?
I do see advertisements in the city's email newsletter and and social media recruiting members for this and other commissions, so that is happening.
Quick question. So I reread the resolution that was shared in the packet for establishing this, and at that time it was 7. When we added the youth member, was it 7 + 1 or one of the 7?
I think it's 7 + 1. The bylaws were amended for that, and those are posted on the website, but I think it's 7 + 1.
Yeah, so the quorum is of the 7 + 1 now, I think.
And then what happened with the youth member? Like it just, oh, you're the youth member. Okay. Hi. Okay, good to know.
The prior youth member graduated.
Right.
Is no longer a youth.
Well, welcome back, buddy. Welcome here. We're happy you're here.
Yeah, and then you're gonna continue through June, right? And then, okay, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Okay, then I adjourn the meeting.